Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there?
Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it, what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that rave line! Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC is 7-5 again. Oh no!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Reddit for Radio, episode 573, coming to you on Wednesday, November 13th. Looking ahead to USC's homecoming game against the Nebraska Cornhuskers at the Coliseum, 1 p.m. on Saturday. It's Jayden Maiava's debut, so we're going to preview that and so much more. As always, follow us on Twitter at Rate of Troy, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rate of Troy, email address from RateofTroy@fansite.com, and our phone number, 818-643-7227, Second Whisper and Show. I'm your host, Mike Casilla, joined along with my co-host here in the Rate of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Derritola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back. We had an episode last week, our Washington Fallout episode. Then Monday was a holiday. We went to the zoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really fun. I don't remember the last time I'd been to the LA Zoo.
Yeah.
And it was a really, really great experience. So highly recommend.
Yeah, they have animals and stuff.
We are not being sponsored by the LA Zoo, but we highly recommend it.
Yeah, if anything, it's the inverse, because we bought a membership, so now we are sponsoring the LA Zoo, sort of, kind of. I mean, not really, but not right. Yeah, but we're back today, Wednesday. Looking forward to being on a normal schedule. Wednesday preview episode, Saturday CarCast USC in Nebraska, and then Monday Fallout episode, and then next Wednesday, previewing the city championship game, SC and UCLA. Locking horns at the Rose Bowl. We're going to have our pal Jake from the What's Bruin Show on hand at some point in the next week or so. We're going to do something. So look forward to that, and we'll probably throw that in next Wednesday's episode as well. So a lot of stuff coming your way. We're super excited about it. The end of the season, which is, exciting, I guess. A lot of things going on. The Trojans are 4-5. Maybe that isn't exciting, but still a lot to play for with the Trojans. They can still go to what they call bowl games if they get a couple of wins here in the last 3. All right. Alicia, but before we get to anything else, I think we want to start with the news. And I feel like it's not necessary to hit the jingle at the moment because we start with some sad news. John Robinson, no longer with us. One of USC's 4 head coaches to win a national championship. Of course, Howard Jones, John McKay, John Robinson, and Pete Carroll. He was 89. He had complications from pneumonia. He led SC to the national championship in 1978, which was wrongly, might I add, shared with Alabama, even though SC had beaten Alabama that season. SC went 4-0 in the Rose Bowl, won 5 Pac-10 titles against John Robinson, including the most recent one, 1996, the Keyshawn Johnson game against Northwestern. He won 104 games as a Trojan, and he left in the middle of his USC tenure because he had 2 terms. He left and went to the Rams and became the Rams' all-time winningest coach. I think Big Faye is about to pass him, but he, as of right now, no one's won more games as the Rams head coach.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer at both levels, and just a absolute legend of USC lore. And it's been, the bittersweet thing about a legend passing away is obviously that they're gone, but then it's always nice to sort of see the tributes that come out about them. Like Keyshawn Johnson had some really nice things to say about J-Rob. Marcus Allen. I've just seen a bunch of the outpouring of stories too, not just like former players. Like I, sent just a tweet saying, fight on forever. And I had people in my mentions telling stories about when they were student managers and how he was such a stickler for the details that, I forget who the player was, but the player tweaked their ankle in practice and had to get spats put on, but the spats were white, and J-Rob insisted that he be wearing the black cleats with the white socks.
Yeah.
So the student manager ran to someone who like a Coliseum worker or whatever, who workman had a can of spray paint, and they spray painted the spats black so that he would come out with the proper shoes. So, this is just like one of those quirky little stories about J-Rob, but there's endless ones of those. And it is, this is the time when it's best to tell those stories and bring on their memory in new ways, in any way you can. So,
yeah. It's, our hearts go out to J-Rob and his family, obviously. USC legend, UNLV legend, by the way. And this week, the Trojans are led by a UNLV legend of another sort, Jayden Maiava. So there's a little connection there. But perhaps the most fitting connection, it's homecoming. This is a game where, homecoming, you think of the past. And Alicia, they've done it. SC has done it.
They did it.
They did it.
In a
Nike,
season-
I praise thee. Praise be to thee, Nike. Our Lord and Savior Nike.
Don't say that too loud.
Sure. Alicia, USC is wearing the Robinson stripes on Saturday against Nebraska. They are back for a throwback. The Trojans released an awesome video, like 70s theme, driving out in like a classic car lowrider thing, the Coliseum. It looks pretty badass, and the Robinson stripes are back, baby. They're back.
I in a season that has been mostly painful, this might save it. This might save it for me. Like, obviously, we'll see what the rest of the season has to bring, and can always bring me back down for damn sure. But the Robinson stripes coming back, USC doing the alternate throwbacks. We've been saying for years that yes, we get it. USC has tradition, and that they don't want to go crazy with all of the alternates, and alternates often, while you get cool ones, like 50% of them are cool and 50% of them are horrific. And so if USC really wanted to find a balance for keeping their tradition intact while also exploring the alternate sort of space, the throwbacks would be the way to do it, because they have these, the Robinson stripes, as you call them. They came in 1972. John McKay brought them in. It was a modernization of USC's jerseys. It was a sort of pro-style uniform, and USC wore those from 72 to 2002, so decades.
2001 was last year, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, 2001. Decades at USC with those stripes. And we'd seen so many schools, like you and I pointed out, Minnesota had jerseys that could be USC's if they just changed the red to from magenta to cardinal.
Maroon.
Sorry, maroon to cardinal. And we knew that it would look good if they just did it. We've known this forever, that it would look good if they just did it. And then they drop it, and it looks fantastic.
So good.
Oh, it's
they even brought back the old numerals.
Yes, they did.
And I love, the new numbers that SC got from Nike they're not bad. They're not bad. They're not my favorite though, because I am nostalgic to the old serifs, the big slabby serifs on the old numbers. The new ones are sort of a modified version of that, but the old numbers are back. This is obviously SC wears traditional uniforms. The throwback is a traditional uniform of itself. Penn State is a school who, like SC up until 2012, didn't have names on their back. They wore them in 2012, names on the back for like 1 or 2 seasons. But, and they have iconic jerseys, right? Penn State wears throwbacks like once or twice a year that will be throwbacks to uniforms they wore in like the 60s or whatever, right? Where they'll have a number on the side of the helmet or they'll have some stripes akin to what they wore back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what SC should do here. I think like if this is a standard homecoming uniform, sign me up. Sign me up. First of all, it's bad enough that homecoming took a big L when the band stopped playing Sing 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 at homecoming. But if the Robinson stripes are back, that'll work for me.
See, there are ways to get throwbacks wrong.
Yes.
See the NFL at least twice a year.
Are you talking about like the ones from like the 20s?
Oh yeah, when they do like the weird vertical stripes and the browns and we don't need to go that far back, but there's so much that that USC can do to tweak the uniform, and they've done it. I really like the collar that USC added with the patterning on the collar. Personally, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the shiny helmets, the Javorium helmets, as we called them. I would love to see those back in an alternate sort of way. I think at least once a year, USC could do something a little bit fun with the jerseys, so long as they sort of walk that line.
Fun, but still traditional.
Yeah, it's fun but traditional. There's a line to walk there, and you can do it. And yeah, maybe once or twice we'll get some truly horrific uniforms, and that'll be bad. But if they only wear them once, then that's fine. The one thing in the chat, people are talking about like West Texas Mike, bring back the shimmery pants. That is the one thing that they could have done that they didn't do here. But you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. What were the pants?
Those pants don't exist anymore.
The like fabric doesn't.
Yeah,
happen.
like now, mind you, I guess you could say that the Cowboys have shiny pants, but like I didn't like the shiny pants. The reason that they were shiny was not because of a USC thing. It's because that's what the texture.
That was the fabric.
Like on those uniforms, like that's what the fabric was. It was that slippery, whatever
like
it was,
lycra or something.
Yeah, lycra spandex. Yeah, whatever it was. That's what it was, right? And because you've told me in the past, you're like, I like when SC wore gold pants. I'm like, they wear gold pants.
The gold that they the color that they wore.
The color has never changed.
No. Okay, fine.
The fabric has changed.
The way that the color presented on the old pants was more gold. This feels more yellow.
I also think this is one of those things where it's like sometimes they photograph different. Like sometimes they look very yellow. Sometimes they look very gold. Like
to be fair, like Notre Dame has worn gold, or Notre Dame's pants have changed too. I don't think by design. I think because
they have the same thing that UCLA does, where their gold now looks sort of pukey.
Like pukey. Yeah, exactly. So like I don't want Notre Dame's gold pants, but but they're a good example of a team that the gold looked good shiny, but now it just looks like a weird brownish beige.
Yeah.
Which
is what I think SC's yellow works. And I think my hottest UCLA uniform take, everyone loves their uniforms, right? This is Jake, I hope you're listening. UCLA's uniforms would look significantly better if they used the basketball color palette and not the metallic gold. If they had yellow yellow gold instead of metallic gold, their uniforms look instantly better. And I think the SC's jerseys look great with that yellow gold. If they were metallic gold like Notre Dame, I think the uniform is significantly worse. Just is like it's much better. The color palette that it is.
It's not the thing I'm gonna live like I'm gonna the hill I'm gonna die on. As far as I'm concerned, the jerseys that they wear on that they will be wearing on Saturday are perfect.
Yes.
And 10 out of 10, A+. couldn't be happier.
Yeah. Cameron in the chat says, is this a throwback uniform PR move to get more people to show up to the Coliseum? No, I first of all, I also saw a bunch of things about like why would you have uniforms when you're losing? Why would you do did they do this because John Robinson passed away? No. Uniforms take literal years to come up with.
There was one of the USC equipment guys or something like that who's on Twitter referenced back 2 years ago in 2022 that USC itself or USC football itself had done a mock-up of the stripes and said, which do you prefer, the stripes or the crescents? Mm-hmm. And that was on social media. Yeah. And it's very clear to me that mock-up, that stuff existed because they were already exploring it 2 years ago.
Right.
Yes, like you said, this stuff takes time to put together. Also, Nebraska, the homecoming game was already sold out, well before any of this came to light. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I don't think that we have talked a lot about USC's attendance issues. Mm-hmm. Alternate uniforms are not what's going to fix USC's attendance issues. I don't think USC is blind enough to think that they will fix USC's attendance issues. I think as a program, I think everyone just recognizes that in the uniform space, everybody is doing alternates, not necessarily as marketing or promotion, but also, follow the dollars. You can sell those uniforms in your bookstore on Fanatics or wherever it is. So right. Every soccer team has 3 uniforms every year that change. And, Oregon has their million different combinations and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that Oregon likes about that is, and surely Nike likes about that, is they can sell all of those and make money. And there are most people who collect these things and buy them no matter what. So,
SC is a rarity in a team that wears the same uniforms every game. Most teams have a bunch of combinations. All you need is 3 helmets, 3 tops, 3 bottoms, and then all of a sudden do the permutations, and you have 24 combinations or whatever it is. So, there's chances for SC to play around with and keep it traditional. A pure throwback is exactly a good thing, and a good thing for them. Let's talk about something that's not a good thing. SC is on probation. Hold on. SC's on probation. In May 2023, enforcement staff contacted USC about a special teams analyst, which is presumably now special teams coordinator, Ryan Dougherty, about providing technical and tactical on-field instruction during spring practice. Quote, the instruction and enforcement staff agree that during the spring and fall of 2022 and spring of 2023, 8 football non-coaching staff members, analysts, impermissibly participated in and on off-field, on
and off-field coaching activities.
That's a weird sentence.
Yes.
Yeah. Including providing technical and tactical instruction to student athletes. As a result, the football program exceeded the permissible number of countable coaches by 6 in the 2021-22 season and 2022-23. Those are academic years, so the spring camp of 2022 would count there. Specifically, analysts assisted in drills, including handling equipment, and delivered verbal instruction and feedback to student athletes during individual group drills and special team sessions. SC was credited with cooperating, and ultimately, it's a giant slap on the wrist. It's 1 year of probation. Lincoln Riley gets not there's no suspension for him, and there's a $50,000 fine, and I think there's some hours that get docked.
So I'll run it down. It's 1 year of probation, which began on November 12th and will continue through November 11th next year. Mm-hmm. The financial penalty of $50,000. Dougherty, we presume, and any other of the analysts who are still employed by the school, we don't know who those are, but some number of them, are going to be barred from 6 consecutive days of practice and film review at some point this season. I don't know if that's already taken place. It may have already taken place. Whatever it is, or it can take place.
Is
at
it
some
the
point.
season or the academic year? Because can they just
push
that to spring?
That's what I don't quite understand. I think
Sure.
it's the season, and if it's the season, I think that maybe a bowl game would be helpful to put those practice hours in.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, USC self-imposed a restriction of 25 hours of athletics-related activities in 2023. So last year, because USC knew about this from May of last year, they self-imposed a 25-hour reduction that is taken into account. So basically,
It's
USC,
like a week. 'Cause I think you get 20 hours a week.
Yeah. So basically, USC allowed analysts to do more on-field coaching than they are allowed to do, which is any. And Lincoln Riley was credited with being with being on top of things in terms of as soon as it was put out there. They even said that there's this line: Riley has demonstrated a track record of promoting an atmosphere of compliance and monitoring his staff, and has consistently taken active steps to ensure the football program operates in a compliant manner. So basically, USC immediately said, "Yep, our bad." They checked their practice tape and said, "Yep, these are all the guys that did it. Our bad." Riley gave a presentation to the whole staff saying, "Hey, this is what you can and can't do." USC self-imposed infractions and worked with the NCAA to come to a sort of a probation agreement and a financial penalty and all that kind of stuff. The funny thing about all of this is that this June, so June of 2024, the NCAA's D1 Council got rid of the restrictions for coaching staffs and analysts. So basically now you can have an unlimited number of coaches who do on-field coaching. Everything that USC's analysts were accused of doing is now completely and utterly legal under NCAA rules. So that presentation that Riley gave, the reaffirming of the rules, all that kind of stuff, blow it out the window because none of it matters anymore. So that's fun. USC getting sanctioned for rules that are no longer for things that are no longer illegal.
Something ex post facto.
Yeah. Okay. And you called this a slap on the wrist. It's 100% a slap on the wrist, but also like barely, because it's just such a minor violation. Like it is so minor. Honestly, and $50,000 is nothing for a football program of USC size. The 1-year probation only comes into play if USC does something else. So don't do something else.
Right.
Frankly, the biggest penalty here, the biggest issue for USC here is just the bad headlines.
It's the PR, yeah.
The NCAA sanctions USC. Again, it's not the same as the Reggie Bush thing, but it's like people see NCAA sanctions USC and think like, oh, there goes USC again being cheaters or whatever, and really it's just like a just random little structural like less than jaywalking kind of thing. That is also like jaywalking where they put in a crosswalk because they realized that everyone was jaywalking there.
Yeah, I think the crime for SC, like you said, I think the punishment is the bad PR, like you said. The crime is not crossing your T's and dotting your I's, right?
Yeah.
Like this isn't the same thing as, ASU having guys on visits during COVID restrictions and all that kind of stuff. It's not paying players when you're not supposed to. Like, it's none of those things. This is, if anything, just procedural.
Yeah, procedural is the word.
Mistakes,
Okay,
operational mistakes.
Honestly, for me, it's also like the issue with it is this general perception that USC is not a well-oiled machine. On the field or off of it.
It allows that narrative to exist.
Yes, and like to me, the thing is like you can't tell me that this wasn't happening across the NCAA because they wouldn't have changed the damn rules if everyone wasn't like this is stupid. Like I can be on the field, but I can't talk to a player about what they're doing. Like it just was, the rule was silly. The issue is that somebody tipped off the NCAA about it. Like, what is that about? Like, you know, who has an axe to grind, or why is USC in a position where somebody can go, like, that's like an internal thing. Like that's not, the NCAA didn't do a spot check on who was and wasn't having technical and tactical on-field instruction by analysts. Somebody narked, and
there has to be self-enforcement.
Yeah, but like
because you can't just have an NCAA person in every room at every moment to know where every conversation is going down and whether or not that's a permissible conversation. Like,
yeah, which is why they didn't punish Lincoln Riley or anything like that, because again, it's like this is all whatever. It's a nothing burger except for the headline of, sanctions.
Yeah. It's a headline that looks bad. Absolutely. Let's go to recruiting news. The sky is falling, it seems, for SC's recruiting class. Lots of rumors about guys potentially flipping. One did today. Hayden Lowe, 4-star edge rusher from Oaks Christian, the 44th ranked recruit in the 24/7 Sports composite ratings, number 3rd player in California, flipped from SC to Miami. We talk a lot about, we've mentioned that, the guys over at USCfootball.com always talk about it's not an individual loss. Like, I think fans love to point out that, you lost this game and so we're going to get decommits. And it doesn't work that way. It's not in the micro sense, it doesn't work that way. In the macro sense, it does, right? Like, why did the 2013 recruiting class implode? Because SC went 7-5 when they were the number 1 team in the country, and they imploded that season after starting 6-2, right? Like,
but a lot of that, the implosion was less about the record and more about the perception that the coaching staff was on thin ice.
But why were they on thin ice? Because they were losing games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's losing multiple games, when it adds up, then you end up into this thing. It's like a guy's not flipping because SC lost to Washington. A guy's, looking at, Miami having more success or whatever else it is.
Or they're offering better NIL, or they were more impressed when they went on their visit, or, they have a better relationship with the coach, or somebody said something one way or another and the wind blew that way, and guys just make decisions. In this case, I try not to get too, turned out by decommitments. It happens. This is decommitment season. It's always flips, all that kind of stuff. My issue here is that Hayden Lowe is from Oaks Christian. And USC is already fighting this sort of war of words with the LA media about, like, whether or not USC, the staff is taking recruiting Los Angeles, Southern California seriously enough, and whether or not they're winning often enough with those guys. Mm-hmm. And to be frank, Hayden Lowe was one of the jewels of the class for USC in a California sense.
Yeah.
And if USC is not going to be getting, we know USC has issues with the modern day kids right now, which Lincoln
Riley was on campus.
Yes, he was. They need to fix that. But also, like, if you don't get the modern day kids, you can make up for it by getting the Bosco kids and the Oaks Christian kids, and wherever else, the Narbonne kids, if they're
Long Beach
good. Poly, all that kind of stuff. But like, USC isn't getting any of those guys right now, and that's the issue. It's not that USC loses this specific player.
Right.
It's that USC.
It's the macro.
It's the macro, exactly. It's that USC is not doing well with players in California in specific. So, like, we've looked in the past at California recruiting rankings, and I remember covering this team during the Stark era, and you'd look at the California state rankings, and it would be, half of the top 10 is going to USC. The current California top commits. I mean, top players in California: Alabama, Texas A&M, Miami, Alabama, Texas A&M, crystal balled to Notre Dame, Alabama, Penn State, UCLA, Texas A&M, Penn State, Alabama, Texas A&M. USC has two guys in the top 20. Matai Tagovai and Tristan Castro. But it's all Oregon's and Texas A&M's and Penn State's and Alabama's.
Yeah.
That's the issue. Not Hayden Lowe as an individual flipping to Miami.
Sure.
It's that USC will finish this class, short of a major flip down the line, will finish this class without a player from the top 10 California players signing in this class because they're all going somewhere else.
And you know, this all comes back to the perception of winning, right? Like we've talked about it before. If you win, then what you're doing is right. If you lose, what you're doing is wrong. Mm-hmm. If SC was not getting California guys, but got a bunch of dudes from Georgia and Texas and had a top 5 recruiting class, nobody would care, especially if it went along with winning games. You know, if the inverse was the same case, like that would be the story. And that is the story, right? Like SC is not winning games. They're 4-5. They lost 5 games last year too. 2 straight years in which they've lost 5 games. They're, have a couple of big flips. And they're not recruiting the guys at home, and combined with not winning games on the football field, that's going to, create the perception that people are not liking that the players are not picking the Trojans. But, Alicia, you guys can pick the Trojans, and the RoT's can pick the Trojans over at Underdog Fantasy. Alicia, this is one of America's favorite. Underdog Fantasy is one of America's favorite fantasy apps. I personally love playing some Underdog Fantasy because you could pick your players, your favorite Trojans, your favorite whoever. This week, go in there and you're like, okay, I like Jayden Maiava. Look at what his stat projection is. Look at how many passing yards he could have, and then you pick whether it's higher or lower. It's super simple. Last time that SC played Washington, I took the higher on Woody Marks' rushing yards, and it hit for me. It was great. So think about your favorites and their stat projections and yards, touchdowns, or catches, and hook up some entries to win real cash prizes all football season long. Just download the app today, Underdog Fantasy, and use the code Reign of Troy to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown, every Trojans, just select higher or lower on Underdog. Just download the app today. Use the code Reign of Troy to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. You must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates, including California. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Alicia, a lot of stuff to get to here, so let's start by previewing USC and Nebraska. Trojans hosted Nebraska for the first time since 2006. I was so pumped. When I was a kid, Nebraska was great. They were the pinnacle of college football. When I was a kid, Nebraska is what Alabama is now.
Yeah.
Like, they were. And if you're like, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Trust me, it does. They were incredible. The 95 Nebraska team is arguably one of the greatest teams ever, along with 72 SC, 2001 Miami. Like, those are the teams that people talk about as being one of the best teams ever. And so when SC scheduled a home and home with Nebraska, it was going to be in 2004 and 5. I would buy the preview, the program every single week when I would go to games with my dad, and I would look at the future schedules because they would have them in the media guide or the program. I saw Nebraska on there, and I was giddy. 2005 is when they're going to go to Lincoln. That's going to be super exciting. Then it got pushed back a couple years. Ended up being 2006 and 7. Trojans faced Nebraska in 2006, won at home, and then won on the road at Nebraska, dropping to 49 in Lincoln against Callahan. It was the Callahan Cornhuskers. But now it's the first time since then, since that SC will face them in the regular season. They beat them in the 2014 Holiday Bowl. The Huskers are 5-4. Head coach Matt Rule's in his second year. Not ranked, but 32nd in the country in FEI, 48th in Jeff Sagarin. They're led by Dylan Raiola, the 5-star quarterback. He's throwing for 1,921 yards this year, 10 touchdowns, 8 picks. Quarterback rating of $130.3. On the road, not as good, but most guys are not as good on the road. Plus, Nebraska's schedule is weird. I think this is one of the things we're going to talk about, home road splits. I don't know how much credence that you can put into Nebraska's road splits. They've played 3 road games at Purdue, who probably would be a touchdown underdog to modern day. Then they were at Indiana and at Ohio State, 2 of the 3 best Big Ten teams, 2 of the 3 best teams in the country, right? So it's hard to say, what is small sample size and tough schedule and what is not performing well on the road, right? But Raiola's had a little bit of an injury scare against UCLA, but he is going to start on Saturday. Backup quarterback Heinrich Harburg. Great name. Is that
Heinrich is just an out there name that always hits, and then you get the alliteration of Heinrich Harburg. Love it.
Yeah, Heinrich Harburg sounds like a left winger for the Canucks.
Yeah, 100%.
It just does. Anyways, he's the backup, but it's going to be Raiola. Running back Dante Dowdell, the transfer from Oregon, averaging 4.21 yards per carry, but really the guys that you got to keep an eye on are probably the receivers. It's a receiving core in which Raiola loves to spread the ball around. Isaiah Nair, the Wyoming and Texas transfer, leads the team with 5 touchdowns, 408 yards through the air. Jamal Banks from Wake Forest has 27 catches, 360 yards, and a couple of touchdowns. Ja'Cory Barney Jr., very fascinating. He has the most catches on the team, 38, but 308 yards. He's averaging 8 yards per catch. He's the short stuff guy. So he's going to be someone that you're going to want to sort of reel in, not let him get the yak yards. But he's the short guy in terms of yardage. I didn't see how tall he was. And then at tight end, Thomas Fedoni, the second, 28 catches, 289 yards. He was a Mackey preseason guy, but all you got to do is be a tight end to be on a roster to be one of those things. 14 catches in his last 3 games. He's really sort of stepped up and been a crutch for Raiola, especially with the tough games. His 2 most productive games in the season came at Indiana and at Ohio State. What does SC do? Not cover tight ends.
Yes, 100%. That's a concern. I did want to add one thing about Ja'Cory Barney.
Mm-hmm.
He only is averaging 8 yards per carry per catch, but he's averaging 13.22 yards per carry. He's 9 attempts for 119 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's their jet sweep guy.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up jet sweeps. Alicia, they have a new offensive coordinator. It's Dana Holgerson. He was hired by Matt Rule. Nebraska coming off a bye week just like the Trojans are. Hired by Matt Rule a week ago as an offensive analyst. And then he woke up Monday and Matt Rule's like, hey, Dana, you're the OC. Take over Marcus Satterfield's job and be the OC. Satterfield sort of gets demoted but stays on the staff.
What a weird world to live in.
It's wild. I wrote in a little rundown, can you think of a midseason hiring like this ever? The only person I can think of that came on a staff out of nowhere that wasn't promoted from analyst or promoted from GA or something like that is Ed Orgeron when he got When he was the interim after Lane Kiffin was fired, he brought on Pete Jenkins in 2013. Dude that wasn't tied up to anything else and just hopped in. I can't think of anybody else. Can you?
No, but I think that we're probably going to see this scenario happen more often because, as we talked about earlier, they've taken away the limits on coaching staffs. You can now bring in an analyst and say, okay, well, we're going to transition you to an official on-field coach because there's not really necessarily a difference. You can change your offensive coordinator to be some guy who was a quality control guy earlier in the season because it's not going to mess with your restrictions about who is and who isn't. So I think we're probably going to see this kind of thing happen. I don't know that we're going to see this happen all the time because Marcus Satterfield keeping his job, for instance, and getting demoted and all of this kind of stuff. It's a unique situation in that sense, but shuffling around of duties is probably going to be more of a feature now. Yeah.
West Texas Mike in the chat mentions Pendergast at UCLA in 2022. I know he was like deputized from being the analyst to the acting DC because the guy who I forget off the top of my head right now.
It was
passed away. Well, he was sick and then ultimately passed away
later,
for UCLA's as their defensive coordinator. But I don't remember the timing on it. Either way, Dana Holgorsen is in. He's going to call plays for the Cornhuskers. Why did I do that little weird thing about the jet sweeps? Because, Alicia, do you remember the Orange Bowl against Clemson?
Yes.
They scored 63, dropped 63 points against Dabo Swinney and Clemson. This was like, what, 12 years ago? Someone needs to run the numbers. I should have looked this up. They ran like 30 jet sweeps in that game. It was jet sweep city. When you think of like iconic jet sweep games, I think there's three that come to mind. One, Oregon State in an Emerald Bowl ran like exclusively jet sweeps with one of the Rogers brothers, James Rogers. And then, of course, Oregon State against SC, James Rogers, and Jaquiz Rogers. And then that game, jet sweep city. So expect a lot of jet sweeps. You mentioned to Corey Barney, a guy to keep an eye on there. Dana Holgorsen obviously used to be the head coach at West Virginia, used to be the head coach at Houston. He took sort of a lateral step back, but then got fired. He was the boss of Belk, USC's secondary coach. So there's a little connection there. But every year in which he's been an offensive coordinator, he has coached an offense that had a top 10 offense. So we'll see if that comes into play for Nebraska and there's a big uptick in their success because this is a pretty not great offense. They're 11th in the Big Ten in total offense, 16th in the Big Ten in yards per play at just 5.26. The only Big Ten teams averaging fewer yards per play, Michigan and Northwestern, two teams that we know have atrocious offenses. The Cornhuskers are 107th in non-garbage yards per play, 121st in non-garbage chunk plays of 10-plus yards, 124th in explosiveness, 63rd in available yards, 75th in success rate, 78th in points per drive, 84th in projected points added. They're not great at any of those things. Any offensive statistic that you look up, Nebraska is struggling with 17th in red zone efficiency. The turnover situation, much better this year than last year. Last year, this was a Nebraska team that had a great defense and an offense that turned the ball over 1 billion times. They were 129th in the country. In turnover margin, they lost 15 fumbles last year. They're still turning over the ball. They've turned over the ball 12 times this year. They're 11th in the Big Ten. The run game, a struggle, averaging just 3.61 yards per carry, 14th in the Big Ten, 109th nationally. That's not going to do it. And it's tough because this is an offensive line that is one of the most veteran offensive line groups in the country. In terms of pure starts, they're the fifth most veteran offensive line, most experienced starting offensive line in terms of starts in the country. But there's a couple caveats here. First, their preseason left tackle that was going to be the star of this offensive line, Turner Corcoran, had a significant hamstring injury against Illinois back in September. He's been out and replaced by Gunnar Gatola. And then, at right guard, they bring in Micah Muskua from Florida. He had 24 starts in his career. He was suspended after the Colorado game, ultimately lost his starting job. He's participated in 6 games. So he's played since he was suspended, but he hasn't started since September. He's been taken over at right guard by Henry Latovsky. Right tackle, sort of the main man on that offensive line, Bryce Benhart. When he suits up on Saturday and plays a snap against the Trojans, he will break Nebraska's all-time games played record. So it's a mixed bag. There's a lot of experience there on the roster, but they're missing their star left tackle, and their big prize incoming transfer on the offensive line has not really been a factor so far. So all told, this is an offense that's obviously led by a 5-star quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. Dylan Raiola. And that account that stands for something, right? Like, he's very talented. He's got a good arm strength. He's nimble. Not necessarily a runner, but he is nimble with his feet. But this isn't an offense that is successful.
I mean, the Mahomes comparison isn't just because of what he looks like. Like, he does play a little bit Mahomesy in the way that Mahomes isn't a running quarterback, but he is certainly capable of running when he needs to, and doing damage with his legs. That's what Raiola would aim to do as well. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing about Nebraska is that, last year it was, well, actually the last few years, it's that they just don't have a quarterback. And Dylan Raiola was supposed to solve that for them. Mm-hmm. The problem being that Dylan Raiola is a true freshman, and this is, what you get when you have a quarterback who is this young and raw. And we had talked about in the summer about how by the time USC got to Nebraska, it was entirely possible that Dylan Raiola would be the best quarterback that they faced all year. And that obviously hasn't come to pass because Dylan Raiola has not quite hit the ground running the way that that Nebraska would have wanted him to.
He's probably the most talented,
immensely talented. But this offense has been kind of stuck in the mud because of the turnovers, because of the sort of clunkiness. And the tough thing for USC here is, all the tape they've got is Satterfield tape. Holgorsen, we don't quite know. I mean, we know what his offense looks like from his days at Houston and West Virginia and all that kind of stuff.
Texas Tech before that.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of tape on Holgorsen, but we don't quite know what he intends to do with Dylan Raiola. Now, the plus side is if USC, coming off the bye week, that's when Holgorsen was hired as an analyst.
Yeah.
When USC saw that Holgorsen was hired as an analyst before he got promoted to OC, which I'm sure no one would have necessarily expected, but I would hope they started to look a little bit at his stuff to sort of prepare tactically for what he's going to try and throw at them. But
it probably helps that Holgorsen and Lincoln Riley have been on the same staff before.
Yeah, and like you said, like Belk has been on a staff with Holgorsen as well. So this kind of stuff is tricky just because we kind of know what he's going to try and do, but also it's entirely possible they come in with a stripped down back to basics kind of stuff that could be a problem for USC. I mean, like we've talked about before, Michigan's offense is terrible. USC probably got them at the worst possible time because it was when they decided, screw it, we're just not going to throw the ball. We're going to bring in our running quarterback and run a sort of faux, just like not triple option, but might as well have been triple option kind of offense. Yeah. And that was going to be the one that was going to screw USC over because USC would have much rather had, Davis Warren throwing passes and being intercepted than what they faced. So it will be interesting to see what, does USC regret not playing Nebraska earlier before they get Holgorsen in and he puts a little touch of something with Raiola and maybe unlocks him, we don't know. There is a lot of mystery here, more mystery than there certainly would have been.
Yeah, and the mystery is going to be there on the other side of the ball when we talk about Jayden Maiava too. But last little thing to mention about Holgorsen is I can't help but feel comparisons to Phil Longo at Wisconsin. Not just because Nebraska looks like Wisconsin, they wear the same uniforms, but in the sense of like this just feels like a traditionally power running offense, and Phil Longo was someone who had air raid ties, and Dana Holgorsen is a straight line from the Mike Leach offense, just like Lincoln Riley is, right? They were on the same tree, same staff at Lincoln Riley. At Texas Tech. So it's interesting because is he going to install something that is more traditionally air raidy? Maybe, but I also think that like we are in a world where I don't think that those labels matter anymore. Teams are not air raid. Teams are not this. They're not that. Unless you're a service academy that's running a triple option, everybody's multiple in some sense. Everybody's running air raid concepts in some areas and spread concepts, and like it's a mixed bag of everybody. So I think that is both easier and more difficult, because like he's not just going to probably install the exact offense that Graham Harrell was running in 2008 at Texas Tech. You know what I mean? So I don't know. We're going to see. Let's talk about the other side of the ball, where SC goes up against a Nebraska defense that is pretty damn good. Per FEI, they are the third toughest USC will have faced to this point, 17th in FEI. Penn State ranks 8th in FEI defense, Minnesota 12th. Notre Dame does rank 5th, so they will, top that list when the Trojans play them in a couple weeks. But this is a team that likes to get after quarterbacks, likes to make negative plays. They make a lot of havoc. Led by defensive end Ty Robinson, 9 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. Jamari Butler on the other end, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. He had a big game against Ohio State, 3 tackles for loss there. Linebacker core, interesting. They have a jack linebacker and a rover. This is one of those multiple defenses that like I don't quite exactly understand what the formation is doing. They're just going to be all over the place. Multiple, throw different things at you. They've got a jack linebacker and MJ Sherman and a rover and Isaac Gifford. Both those guys have a bunch of production. Gifford leads the team in tackles with 53. MJ Sherman has 4.5 tackles for loss from the jack linebacker spot. In the back end, too, corner, Malcolm Hartzog. 4 interceptions. Pretty good. Jayden Maiava threw interceptions last year at UNLV. SC has thrown interceptions this year. Miller Moss threw a bunch of interceptions, right? So this is a team in Nebraska that's willing to take advantage of those things. So you got to somehow find a way to subvert that. We talked about havoc, 6.3 tackles for loss per game, which is 4th in the Big Ten, 2.8 sacks per game, which is 3rd in the Big Ten. The run game, I think, is going to be very interesting because, Alicia, believe it or not, SC is 8th in the country in rushing success rate. 50.8% of rushing plays are deemed successful, which is 8th in the country. Nebraska isn't exactly successful on the inverse of that, 57th defensively in success rate on run plays. So maybe that's an area that you want to go. I think that this all leads to the gigantic question, what is the game plan for SC with Jayden Maiava? Do you go simple and not try to throw too much at him? Do you just run your offense and don't change anything else because this is your offense, this is your identity, etc.? We know that he has the ability to scramble more so than Miller Moss. So what do you do here?
Well, I certainly try to keep things as simple as possible. I think if ever there was a time to lean on the run, it's now, especially because you can do more read option kind of stuff and provide a threat from your quarterback as a runner. I think that you want to get your play action game going, your RPOs, your read options, all of those, anything that can take the pressure off of Maiava to, like, you don't want Maiava throwing the ball 50 times. You just don't. The nice thing about Maiava is he does have a big arm. That's what the wide receivers have been raving about all week in practice. Like, he can chuck it. So, basically, not to toot my own horn, because my own horn is pretty wimpy and terrible in college football 25, but like, I'm thinking about like my offense in college football 25 because I don't trust myself to not throw interceptions. Specifically, my offense is run the ball, run the ball, run the ball until you're put in a passing situation, and then long. So, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. If you get coverage that puts the defense in a vulnerable state for the long ball, and go deep and see what you can get. But it all has to start with run the ball. And when you have Woody Marks and you have Quentin Joyner, you should be able to feed them in this game and not overwork either of them, but get them plenty of run as well. I've been beating the drum that USC's running efficiency numbers are partly they're partly a reflection of the fact that USC doesn't run that much, and USC not running that much is a reflection of USC choosing to run when the looks dictate it. Mm-hmm. And thus the efficiency is good because USC is only running into looks that lend themselves to gains in the rushing attack.
Yeah.
But having said that, you still have to be able to go. I mean, we've seen USC also run the ball against tougher fronts and still find a little bit of success, find some success. I mean, if you could run on Penn State's front the way that USC did, then you should be able to go out there and run on Nebraska's front. So, there's certainly some nuance to the question around USC's run game. Mm-hmm. But in this game, you cannot ask Jayden Maiava to be Superman. You certainly don't want to ask him to be Caleb Williams. And you don't throw what you were throwing at Miller Moss, who was a fourth-year junior. Give him the sort of narrower playbook and let your fundamentals carry you.
Yeah, I don't think that, they're not going to go out and run the Alicia run offense. That's not going to be a thing. But Mike in the chat points out that Nebraska's defense was very good against the run against Ohio State. It was. The week before, though, they gave up, 215 yards on 33 carries from Indiana and 5 touchdowns, averaging 6.52 yards per carry. Rebounded immediately the following week and only gave up 2 yards per carry against Ohio State. So mixed bag against their 2 toughest opponents. So that's that.
But it's also beyond, like, I guess what I'm saying is I want USC to not be afraid to try running the ball.
No, I agree.
Even when it feels like they aren't. Like, for instance, Ohio State didn't run the ball very well. Only 64 yards, 2.06 yards per carry. But they still ran the ball 31 times because there's sort of functionality there that you're trying to build up. And Nebraska is a defense that wants to get after the quarterback. They want to create havoc in the backfield. And you can, you end up potentially putting your quarterback under a lot of pressure, especially with the offensive line that USC has, the inconsistency in pass pro. They've gotten a lot better, but you're still inconsistent. You want to limit the opportunities they have to get after the quarterback and create havoc plays. Running the ball can help do that.
Yeah, I hear you, but also this is an offense that is pass first. It's a pass first offense that throws to run. And I think that that's probably what you're going to expect to see. I think where it can get a little simpler, and maybe not simpler in like the biggest sense. Like I don't think it's going to be the Jack Sears playbook where they cut the field in half on every single play kind of deal. But I think that I would expect more RPOs, more simple reads, more zone reads, like you mentioned too. And that could be just the thing. Just go after the numbers. Wherever
That
the numbers
alone-
are,
yeah, that alone
could
creates-
end up, creating easier times for SC to sort of get yards that way. Go to where the numbers aren't, right? The interesting thing is going to be the long ball. We're going to get more into this in over-under, but Jayden Maiava can throw a deep ball. He threw a bunch of deep balls last year at UNLV. SC has not been getting those deep balls to hit. They got a bunch of them last year when they had Caleb Williams and Taj Washington throw a bunch to each other, but it hasn't been something that has hit for the Trojans so far this year. The longest pass play was a 70-yard pass play from Mekhi Lemon, and that was on a slant. Or a crossing. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what this offense is. Either way, I would expect the zone read to be in the game. I wouldn't necessarily expect a lot of designed runs. I think it'll be interesting to see how Maiava manages the pocket. Mm-hmm. Does he run often in scramble? And is that a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Yeah.
Is he able to scramble and pick up the yards that maybe Miller Moss wasn't able to do? Or is he going to be someone who ends up scrambling on, first sign of pressure and then puts himself in dangerous positions? We're going to see. We're going to see what it exactly it is for him. And
I do want to. Yeah. I want to point out one more thing. The danger man in that secondary,
Malcolm
Hartzog, missed the UCLA game. He had a hamstring injury. He's supposed to be back in time because they had a bye week. Mm-hmm. He's supposed to be ready to go for this game, but their big danger man at corner is coming off of a hamstring injury. We know how tricky hamstring injuries are.
Yeah.
He's had 3 weeks, but often you don't quite get back totally to perfectly comfortable until 4 or 5 weeks after.
Yeah.
So, that's one thing where maybe early on you test him, see what he's what speed he's at, and whether or not you can get some big plays going down the field.
Yeah, we will see how that works. Let's go to over-under and play some over-under and talk about some lines in this game.
So you're going over.
I'm going bold. Give me that over.
I gotta take an under. I got 3 unders to take. I'm gonna do an under here.
All right, Alicia, what do you got? First one.
All right, I got 24.5 Jayden Maiava sack-adjusted rushing yards. At UNLV, he had 340 rushing yards sack-adjusted in his freshman season. He averaged 24.28 yards per game. Interestingly, because Pro Football Focus sort of parses this out, 157 of those 340 yards, were designed runs, and 183 were scrambles. So he's sort of 50-50 design runs and just improvisational plays. Caleb Williams, by comparison, in 2022 had 624 yards at 44.5 yards per game. The next year, production went down on that front. 356 yards for 29.66 per game. So we have precedent for, in this Riley at USC offense, for a quarterback getting to the 25 to 30 yard range in games in terms of the quarterback being involved on the ground. Maiava in his first year had 8 games with less than 20 and 6 games with more than 20. So sort of straddling that line. So that's going to be the 24.5 Jayden Maiava sack-adjusted rushing yards. But just for shits and giggles, I looked up Miller Moss's rushing stats.
Mm-hmm.
He had 36 yards rushing. 35 of them came on designed runs, and 1 came on a scramble.
Yeah.
That is not the number I expected.
I think that was one of the areas that I think Miller Moss could have done a lot better.
Lot more, yes.
Is that he didn't have stone feet. I know that people like to say that he had stone feet.
He's not a statue.
He's not a statue, which is why I think that it was probably a little more frustrating that he sometimes didn't take the 5-yard scramble to just live to see another down kind of thing. But I'm gonna take the over on 24.5. Jayden Maiava sack-adjusted rushing yards. Look at the Utah State game. look at the Rutgers game. As soon as he got in, he immediately took off. I think he is going to be sort of hyped up and looking to make a move on the ground in some sense. I wouldn't necessarily expect like a 75-yard rushing game or anything like that, but like,
certainly could if he break. He could get out and
sure. But I think he's gonna be able to look for some scrambles and that. So I think 24.5. I think give me the over on that. My first one is 1.5 Dylan Raiola interceptions in the game on Saturday. SC has 5 interceptions on defense at home this year, just 2 on the road. We know that SC plays better at home than they do on the road. The only game that they've lost at home is to a top 5 team in overtime, right? Mm-hmm. On the road, they've lost a bunch more than that. So they intercepted Drew Aller at home 3 times. They had none against Rutgers and Ethan Kaliakmanis. So what gives here? Raiola's had 4 interceptions in his last 2 road games. He had 3 at Indiana, 1 at Ohio State. He's not had a quarterback rating over $112 since September. And he's coming off his injury scare. So 1.5 Raiola interceptions. What do you got?
I am taking the under on this. Okay. I wish I had thought to look this up a little bit earlier because I wanted to see one thing that is annoying about CFB stats, that they don't let you do game logs for sacks allowed, which is my biggest complaint. But so I wanted to look up in the games where he's had interceptions, how many of those interceptions could we reasonably assume were partially pressure induced. So I'm looking up, how many sacks did UCLA have? UCLA had 4 sacks. Ohio State had 3 sacks. Indiana had 3 sacks. No. Wrong thing.
This is riveting audio.
2 sacks. Yeah. So my issue with the interception thing is that, yes, USC has had interceptions come, but my philosophy has always been that you create more opportunities for interceptions if you make a quarterback rush a throw because they're getting pressured. Right. Or you hit a quarterback and cause the ball to jostle loose and be a floater or whatever. And one of the things that USC does not do is sack quarterbacks, hit quarterbacks, do anything like that. So that on top of Dana Holgorsen comes in, I imagine they will pare down what they want to do offensively. He's only been there 2 weeks. You can only install so much. You can only sort of tweak so much in a couple of weeks. I think that we'll see a simplified offense for them and thus maybe a more conservative-looking Dylan Raiola. So I'm taking the under.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Raiola's only had 1 game in which he had multiple picks, and SC's only had 1 which they've had multiple interceptions for also. So the line at 1.5 is probably a little bold, but I wanted to make it more interesting than 0.5. So you take the under on that. What's your next one?
My next one is 33.5 USC rushing attempts. USC has only attempted more than 29 rushes in 2 games. Both of those were wins at home to Utah State and Wisconsin. Each of those games, USC ran the ball 37 times. Nebraska's last 7 opponents have all attempted 30 or more rushing attempts. Sort of split the difference from 37 to 29-ish. I think that USC being at home, I was going to set this at 30, and then I thought USC being at home, we have seen more runs. We do have a quarterback situation where we're probably going to see more runs as well. So put it up at 33.5. But as I've made very clear, I think the key to winning this game is running the ball. So this is a big one.
Yeah, I'm going to take the over. SC plays better at home. If you play better, you have more chances to run the football. Plus, like we talked about, there's going to be 2 or 3 plays at least that Maiava ends up turning into a scramble of some sort. That could be the 2 or 3 plays that get me the over on this. So over 33.5 USC rushes.
Yeah.
Let's go to my next one, which is over under 5.5 Nebraska tackles for loss. The Huskers are averaging 6.3 tackles per game, 6.67 on the road, but again, weird sample size about their schedule. Only played 3 road games. One of those was against Purdue, and the other 2 were against Indiana and Ohio State. They had 4 tackles for loss at Indiana, 7 at Ohio State, 9 in that Purdue game. SC started to crack down on not allowing negative plays. Last couple of weeks, Rutgers had 1 tackle for loss. Washington had 3. Penn State, the really good team, the really good defensive team that came into the Coliseum, had 6. So the line is at 5.5. Can Nebraska match the 6 that Penn State had a month ago?
This is tricky because I think I took the over on tackles for loss against Washington, right? And missed that, or one of these recent games, I missed that. In part because USC has done a better job of not giving up sacks, and then also doesn't actually give up that many tackles for loss in the run game. So as aggressive as Nebraska might be on that front, I don't expect a ton of tackles for loss in the run game. However, one of the things that Miller Moss was very good at was simply getting the ball out quickly if there was pressure. Didn't always complete the pass, but he definitely got rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Maiava, because of his ability to run, because of his dynamic running ability, I think there will certainly be plays where he avoids a sack because of his mobility. On the flip side, any mobile quarterback sometimes gets caught thinking they're going to evade a defender, and they don't. So I expect USC to have more sacks allowed in this game than they've had in previous games just because of the Maiava factor. And Nebraska's going to, be very aggressive and get after it. And so it's a lot. It's a lot, and I'm going to regret taking the over here, but I am taking the over.
If there are more rushes, there's more chances for losses too.
Yeah.
A negative pass play is not too, plentiful. So let's go to your last one. What do you got?
Okay, we're going 2.5 USC sacks. So on the flip side-ish, Nebraska is allowing 2.33 sacks allowed. They are not a good team in terms of preventing sacks, despite that veteran offensive line. On the other hand, USC is not good at getting sacks, averaging 1.44 sacks per game. If my evaluation is, if my reading of stats and starters is correct, USC still has not had a player who was starting on the defensive line log a sack in the game that they started on the defensive line. 9 games into the season, which is truly astounding. Mm-hmm. This is just not a team that gets quarterbacks down. Dylan Raiola can evade pressure, but he's a freshman. And again, like I said, any mobile quarterback, you run into the possibility of them maybe being a little bit too blasé about trying to take off and run. So, I think there will be opportunities to get sacks here.
Yeah. Will
USC get through it? I mean, against Rutgers, USC found their sack their sack mojo. So it could happen.
It could happen, but it's not. I'm taking the under. I gotta take the under and just keep riding the wave of the under because I took the over on sacks way early in the season, and it backfired. So riding the under until I'm proven otherwise. Let's go to my last one, which is 0.5, over under 0.5 USC pass plays of 40-plus yards. Trojans have had 5 of those this season. Nebraska's allowed 4, which is pretty good. They're one of the better teams at not allowing gigantic, explosive pass plays. But last year, Jayden Maiava at UNLV had 14 pass plays of 40-plus yards. If you look at 50-plus, he had 9 of those. The only one who had more in the entire country, the only quarterback, some guy named Caleb Williams. Yeah. Had more. He had 10. But 0.5 USC pass plays of 40-plus yards. What do you got?
I am curious how many of those pass plays of 40-plus yards were Ricky White.
A lot. Like,
because that makes it a little bit of a difference.
But like, so does the Taj Washington thing. Like,
for sure.
I'm looking at it last year. Keep making your pick. I'll tell you right now.
Okay. So, well, either way, I am actually kind of bullish on this. I'm going to take the over.
Okay.
My thinking is, yes, Maiava has a bigger arm. They will be more likely to take shots downfield or connect on shots downfield. I could also get this by having Mekhi Lemon or Zachariah Branch take a swing pass 40-plus yards. I like the odds on this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going with that over. I don't think it's a guarantee that USC will be able to hit those deep shots.
Sure.
Least of all because Jayden Maiava doesn't necessarily have the same chemistry level with these receivers as Miller Moss did. Not that like that always, that always worked out considering the drops and stuff this season. But Miller Moss certainly had more time, familiarity, and all that with this receiving core, and Maiava's still very new to this receiving core. So maybe they could be on the same page. They could not be on the same page too. But either way, I like my odds given the arm strength, given the fact that USC theoretically does have deep threats, theoretically. And also, it could be one of the non-deep threats. It could be one of the yak guys who gets it for me.
Yeah, that locks you to the over and me to the under. I looked it up. Ricky White last year, 40-yard catches. He had 10, most in the country. Taj Washington had 9.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Just one behind.
So it wasn't just a Ricky White thing.
And if you look at 50-yarders, Ricky 7 of those tied with Jalen Royals from Utah State, a guy that SC sort of held under wraps earlier this season. So, that's over under. Let's go to game predictions. Did I not pull up the Vegas spread? I'm losing it here. The Vegas spread is SC by 8.5. The FEI projection agrees. FEI says SC wins 30-22. What do you got?
ESPN Analytics has USC with an 82.1% chance of winning, which is quite high for a 4-5 team playing a 5-4 team.
Mm-hmm.
I like the FEI projection.
FEI has been spot on.
Yeah. Well, aside from the whole USC winning or not.
Yes, but like
but in the ranges, they're
absolutely they understand the
they
scoreline.
understand what USC is.
Yes.
They can't. They don't get to control whether or not USC decides to win, being who they are. So I'm going 27-20, a mirror image of the LSU win.
Mm-hmm.
I hesitate to put 27 on the board because Nebraska has, limited a lot of really good teams to less than that. But this is at home. I think the Maiava factor will be significant here. And the 20 is just because it's a 20-point defense, and I'm just gonna, every week it will simply be 20.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm keeping it 20 also. 24-20 is what I'm going to go with. Nebraska's defense is good. Jayden Maiava could come in and everything clicks for SC's offense, and they score 40 points, and that could be a thing. But also, we've talked about it. There's a reason that Lincoln Riley picked Miller Moss at the beginning of the season. Is that because he thought that Miller Moss was more prepared and Maiava is a step behind? It could be. Has Maiava developed more in the last couple of months? Maybe. Does Maiava fit this offense more and Lincoln Riley got it wrong? Maybe. I don't know. But until I see it, I'm going 24-20. Nebraska has a good defense. I think SC plays better on the road. At home. Absolutely plays better at home. We've seen this. That's the true home road splits, is that SC plays their game and plays as expected at home, and on the road, they don't. The home games, you look at SC's home games, if you looked at the score lines, if you just watched those games, and that was the only thing that you would watch, you'd think that SC was a playoff contender. The only loss to Penn State in overtime. controlled every other game. Never in doubt. The Wisconsin game, they obviously came back at halftime, but they controlled that game thoroughly in the second half. So 24-20 because yeah.
I mean, because at this point, score predictions are just blindly throwing darts at the wall anyways. But with this team in particular, it's just I don't know. Both teams will score somewhere between 20 and 30 points.
Yeah.
And I can't predict which one will have more points because who the heck knows?
I will say, I think that all the close games have been exciting in the sense that all these games matter in the fourth quarter, right? Mm-hmm. The bad thing is for SC that's been the case because they've lost so many of those fourth quarters, but it does, I think, make it easy to get predictions in the ballpark when those are the games, these NFL-y type scores.
Very NFL-y. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
USC has been very frustratingly NFL-like.
Every NFL game is 27-24.
Yeah.
Every single one. Could be the best team against the worst team. It's 27-24.
Yep.
And that's where SC is right now. So, all right, we're going to turn the page, turn the sport even. Alicia, are you ready for Alicia's basketball, one good basketball minute?
One good basketball minute, yes. All right, USC men's basketball, last beat, Idaho State, 75-69. Weirdly tight game. USC doesn't feel good coming out of that, but they are 2-0. Next up on Wednesday night, they play UT Arlington. Much better news for USC women. The USC women set a new school record for points in a 124 to 38 victory over CSUN. His incredible victory, wasn't close from the start. Also on Wednesday, they announced the signing of Jazzy Davidson, who is the number 3 player in the number 3 recruit in this class, who will be joining up as a freshman. Great name, Jazzy Davidson. Juju Watkins, great name. Passing the baton, Jazzy Davidson. Very exciting to see this team continue on. Their next game is...
The next game you didn't get to. Wow, what a fail.
Their next game is against Santa Clara on November 15th, which is Friday.
USC and SCU. Yeah.
Yeah. My brother's alma mater.
Yeah.
You've got mail.
All right, let's get to the mailbag. We got an email from Tony. Michael, Alicia, it's Tony from the Nora, PA. Became an SC fan around 1975 at the end of the John McKay and start of the John Robinson era. He was a great coach, and his style was physical power football. John Robinson loved to run the football. His philosophy was run the ball, then run it again, and then run it again. I loved watching Charles White. That offensive line would create a hole, and White would power through it, student body right and left. He also had a great quarterback in Paul McDonald. He was outstanding for SC. The 1979 championship team was one of the best SC ever put on the field. John then took his philosophy to the NFL and had some great years with the Rams. Eric Dickerson set the all-time season single rushing record under Robinson, which still stands today. R.I.P. Coach John. Fight on, Tony from the Nora, PA.
Once again, Tony nails it. 100%. A good tribute to John Robinson, and yeah, we're all hoping him rest in peace and fight on forever.
Yeah, absolutely. A true legend, John Robinson. Can I talk about a mistake that I've made on the pod before? If we had a producer that did the thing like the PTI mistakes.
Yeah.
The number of times that I've inadvertently said the word Jim in front of McKay and said Jim McKay instead of John McKay.
Oh.
An embarrassing mistake. Jim McKay, of course, a famous sportscaster of the time. But it's just one of those things, you're saying, quick J name, just throwing it out there. John, Jim, Joe. You know what I mean?
Jim, Joe.
Yeah, one of those. All right, we got a phone call from Darren.
Hey guys, this is Darren from Reno. I just want to make this call short today. We kind of have a larger sample size now with 9 games, and looking back over the season and kind of what I see happening now, and it was pretty obvious in the Washington game. I think a lot of the blame this year has to go on Lincoln Riley. I think he continues to be stubborn and do things that he thinks are going to work, even though all the information is telling you differently. I think the fans can see that. We have the PJ Fleck quote about him knowing he can run the ball, but just not wanting to. We see him throw it 50 times against Washington. And I know the guys over on Tunnel Vision pointed out that, USC's 2 of their best receivers weren't even in the game to start the game, I believe. And he's just throwing it more. And I think all the signs are there for him to run, and he just refuses to run the football more. So with a larger sample size, obviously Miller Moss deserves a little bit of the blame. I think everybody does, but it seems to me like Lincoln Riley, like a lot of head coaches, he's being stubborn. And the information's there for him to take and use, and he is just continuing to ignore what's given and think that he's just going to do what he's going to do. And I don't think you can operate that way. I don't think that wins games. So anyway, that's my take. Love to hear you guys' opinion. Thanks. Bye on.
Thanks for the call as always, Darren. Yeah, I think that you summed up a lot of it, right? Like, there's a lot of stubborn mistakes, both in the play calling, in the game planning. Absolutely. I do think that there's instances where I think some of the play calling stuff makes sense, but the problem is, like the Minnesota game, for instance, like we talked about it at the time, like he went away from the run. Not really. He went away from the run because there weren't any other drives, and like the time that they got the ball again, they had to throw because it was the last drive of the game, kind of thing. Like, yeah, but the problem is that when you have a game like the Washington game, where you throw the ball 50 times and then you run the ball super successfully in the second half, but you still throw the ball 50 times, the cow's out of the pasture, whatever the saying is, right? Like, you're not going to get the genie back in the bottle.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
The
like,
toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah, like, because at that point, like, the perception is the reality, especially when it is the reality, right? Like, the few games where, you can give him the benefit of the doubt don't matter, because that's what the perception is, that he's going to throw the ball every time.
Yeah, and I don't presume to know more about running an offense than Lincoln Riley. I think it's safe to say that Lincoln Riley has forgotten more about running an offense than either you or I.
You don't give yourself enough credit. Yeah.
Hey, my ball possession, run the ball, wait 40 seconds, run the ball, wait 40 seconds, drain an entire quarter with my drives offense is it's the best offense I've run on that game. So
I love you dearly, but I would rather take a shower in pre-lawsuit McDonald's coffee than watch you play NCAA. Like it is grueling.
What I play I play NCAA. I play college football 25. The way that Sam Allardyce coached soccer. And I won't get into that for the people who don't want to
Tony
talk about
Pulis.
soccer. Tony Pulis, great example. Yes, that's, you know what? Whatever it takes to win, baby. It's going to be ugly, but we're going to do it. Okay, having said all of that, yes, I think my frustration often with coaches who know so much about running an offense that they can't see the forest for the trees. Like, they get bogged down in all of the machinations and all of the little, setting up plays here and there and designing this and that and doing this and that and all that kind of stuff. And they can sometimes lose sight of just the basics, right. i.e., yes, I want to have a balanced offense. And yes, I want to have the game on my quarterback's shoulders. And yes, all of these kinds of things. But sometimes you just need to be a big old lug who just knocks your head into a brick wall enough to break it. Like, sometimes you need to recognize that Your offensive line is not doing great except for when you run the ball downhill. Well, I'm just going to keep running the ball downhill. And we saw that work for him against Washington. That drive where they fail at the goal line, they run the ball like 8 times in a row. The problem there is, again, he gets to the goal line, and because he's offensive genius guy, he runs the pass play to Deuce Robinson that they've tried to run pretty much every game this season, and I don't think it's worked yet. And, like, I get it, but you could have also just run the ball. And, yeah, you might get stopped 4 times in a row, but, like, I'd rather you get stopped 4 times in a row.
I hear everything that you're saying, and I'm with you. That drive didn't fail because he threw one time on second down.
No. I mean, that wasn't a good example, aside from the fact that he can do it. He can just say we're going to run the ball.
Right.
It also goes back to, like, and it works in the other way too. Like, we talk about one of the most genius coaching moves ever was the Rose Bowl when USC came out against Michigan, coincidentally, came out in the second half and said, screw it, we're literally just going to throw the ball.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, the playbook and everything always says, well, you need to run the ball. You can't just only throw the ball. But when it came down to it in that game, where were your advantages? Just throw the damn ball. It doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. Do what's working. And that's what I would like to see from Lincoln Riley. I don't think it's because Lincoln Riley doesn't know what he's doing. He absolutely knows what he's doing. It's just that sometimes people who know what they're doing know it too well and can't get back to the basics of simple is sometimes better. It's not always better.
Yeah.
But simple is sometimes better.
Yeah, the other thing in terms of like run pass ratio is I think there needs to be some, like, one of my biggest frustrations, and Darren didn't do this, but like this is just something that comes up a lot. That's why I'm bringing it up here. Is people talk about the word identity. Oh, SC's got no identity. Like, they need an identity. They do have an identity. Their identity is what you are. Like, that's what your identity is. But people use the word identity as a fill-in for the word run game.
Mm-hmm.
And because they want the identity to be run first, right? That's not what USC is. That's not what USC is going to be. That's not what USC will likely ever be, ever again. Because
that's not what
most teams in the country are not run first. Like that's not what the sport is anymore. So like, SC doesn't need to run student body left and right anymore. And I think that like there are moments where they should run the ball more than they are, and they should probably have more of a balance that's between 55 and 45 on every given game between there. But like, I think that there are some fans that set themselves up to be disappointed.
Oh, this is fun. Because
the idea that like, I'm
gonna let you finish.
You know, John McKay created the I formation, and so, you know, he ran the ball on 97% of plays, right. And so did John Robinson, and so like that's what USC does.
Can I point out this year so far, there are 21 teams. Oh, hi Jesse. There are 21 teams. Somebody wants dinner. I don't know if the fans can see her.
Oh my God! She really wants
dinner. Hi.
She's never come on camera this way before.
Jesse Cam, we need my camera time, huh?
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. There are 21 teams who are averaging more than 40 or more rushes per game. 21. In 2016, how many teams do you think averaged 40 or more rushes per game?
You said 21 this year.
21 this year.
What was it in 2016?
What was it in 2016?
48.
58.
Yeah.
Half of college football was running the ball 40 or more times in 2016. That's not that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, less than a quarter, are running the ball 40. That's just the changing times.
Back that up another 8 years to 2008, and it's probably
well, if CFP stats still went back to 2009, I could, but they don't, and I'm mad about it.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Any other questions in the chat that you wanted to get to?
We had a question from Oscar who asked, will Jayden Maiava throw 3 or less touchdowns on Saturday?
I would say less, just because SC has not been a team that has been scoring 1 million points on offense. And so he could have a very successful day and still not throw 3 touchdowns.
I think the bigger thing is Nebraska. I think we get bogged down in things like what USC does, but you always have to remember what the opponent's defense is going to do. Now, to be fair, Ohio State and Indiana both had 3 touchdown passes. Illinois had 4 touchdown passes. That's nobody else has had UCLA had 2, but everyone else has had 1 or 0. So Nebraska is not a team that necessarily gives up a ton of passing touchdowns. I think that 3. I would say that he is more likely to have 2 than 0, but more likely to have 2 than 3. I don't know if that makes sense, but it made sense in my head.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like you said, your prediction is 27 points, mine's 24.
Yeah, that's
you could have 3 touchdowns, but the odds are you're probably not. So yeah, I think that makes it tough there. By the way, Alicia, I pulled up the stats from 2008.
Mm-hmm.
There's a factor I don't think we accounted for. How many teams do you think ran the ball 40 times in 2008?
All of them? No, that's not true.
26.
26. Oh, okay. So it was fewer.
It's because there were fewer plays then, because
That's
teams
true.
are running slower. So, okay.
So teams are running faster in 2016.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So change the number to 33 and a half, because that's what the SC line was on your over under, right? 33 and a half. How many teams were at 33 and a half?
58.
In 2016?
Oh, in 2016 at 33 and a half, we are at 111.
Yeah, 89 in 2008.
Yeah.
And you said how many this year?
This year at
58?
At 33 would be 95.
95. Okay.
Yeah. So the point being, RJ in the chat says, like, fans want Lincoln to play the strengths of SC. Nobody wants to go back to old school running. Stop with the straw man argument. I don't think we're giving a straw man argument.
Yeah.
I think we're pointing
that should be what the goal is. This is the play to your strengths.
Yes, absolutely play to your strengths. The difference here is that teams way back when would naturally, because of development of the lack of development of passing offense being so far behind rushing offense, it would be normal for teams to run the ball 60% of the time and pass the ball 40% of the time. We're not in that time span. We're in a time span where passing the ball is also extended handoffs. It's also screens and all sorts of other things that don't necessarily mean that you aren't using rushing concepts, and your numbers might look skewed. But as that rant I just went on goes along with, like, there are times when extended handoffs and all of these other tricky things that the offense is trying to do, you'd be better off just saying, screw it, we're just going to run the ball. I mean, not a great example, but I just always think of, like, Stanford, the running power, play after play after play. Like, you can demoralize a team by running at them like that. Now, you still have to be able to execute. My problem with the conversations around play calling is that so often it's not play calling you're mad at, it's execution you're mad at.
Right.
No coach calls a play that they intend to have go wrong. That it's never that it's never that simple. And every play call that works looks like genius, but ones that don't work, then everyone says, like, oh, what an idiot, you did that. So it's just more nuanced and complex than that. But yeah, either way.
Yeah.
Cassie,
Yeah.
that's not for dogs.
We'll wrap it up there. We will be back Saturday after the game with a CarCast talking to SC and Nebraska. The Trojans play at 1 o'clock. So we'll be back in a couple days. Until then, we will see you.
See ya.
See ya.